The year was 2036. That's where he apparently came from, John Titor. And when he did, all kinds of things happened. We'll be back in a moment with Oliver Williams, who heads up the website for the time traveler John Titor. The website is johntitor, Titor.com. And Oliver is next on Coast to Coast AM. Oliver Williams, website editor for the time travel story of John Titor. What a story it is. He first saw John Titor's internet postings in the fall of 2002, and after reading many of the sites where John was discussed, it amazed Oliver as how much polarization and confrontation John's posts caused. Here he is, full show tonight, Oliver Williams. Hey, Oliver, how are you?
Hey, George, how are you doing?
Long time, my friend.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Since then, has John shown up yet?
No, I don't think he showed up yet.
Still gone. Lots of new people, Oliver. Tell us a little bit about John Titor.
John Titor was a person who went on the Internet back in November of 2000. And what he did was he went on to various websites and forums talking about time travel and science. And he basically went on and said, I'm a time traveler. If anybody has any questions they want to ask me, go ahead. So over a period of about 3 months to March 2001, he answered all sorts of questions from people about the nature of time, how time travel worked. He posted pictures of his time machine. And he made a series of statements, which a lot of people consider predictions, which at the time nobody really paid any attention to. Abruptly, he left in March of 2001, and nobody has heard from him since. And slowly, as time has gone by, many of the things that he said have come to pass, or a lot of people feel that what he said has come to pass.
When he started posting on the Art Bell website at the time, the furor started, and then all of a sudden, this thing just spread all over the Internet, didn't it?
Absolutely. I have my own theory about how that happened or why it happened, because I think it's what got me into it. But he said a couple of things right away. In fact, it was one of the first things he said. He was talking about how his time machine worked, and he said that in the fall of 2001, CERN was going to make an announcement that they expected to be able to create mini black holes in their new collider, which will be coming on soon.
Very soon.
And I'll be darned if a few months after March, that's exactly what CERN did. They came out and made that announcement. I think it was that single event which caused it to catch on. Then people started talking about it, going to the Post, looking more closely at what he said, and that's how it started.
Tonight we're going to talk about some of those things that Titor talked about to see if they have come true, and some of them, of course, are in the future as well. What kind of an individual did he appear to be when he was doing his postings, Oliver? Was he approachable?
Yeah, he seemed friendly enough. He would answer any question that was given to him. I think he was easily kind of annoyed by some of the things he was asked. And I also got the impression after reading that he was a little bit surprised by our society. He harbored some anger and some, discontent towards us. But I think overall, on an individual basis, he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But he definitely had his opinions about, our time and how we lived our life.
Now, he was from the year 2036, but when he came back into our time period, the real John Titor, the little boy John Titor, was around, right? In Florida, I guess.
That's correct. He claims to have been with his family while he was online. He was using his father's computer, and he was staying in the home of his parents at the time. And what he claimed he did was he basically walked up to him and said, "Hi, I'm your son from the year 2036. He said he was able to prove to them beyond a shadow of a doubt who he was. And then he stayed with them for that period of time. And while he was with them, the little version of himself that is in our time was with him. And I think at the time he was 3 years old. So today I think he would be 9 or 10. But yeah, he did claim to have met himself as a younger child.
Now, I didn't think you could do that, or at least that's what I heard on the various Hollywood movies we would look at.
Well, how long has it been? 5, 6 years since I've been following this?
Yeah.
Of course, you can't help but read about time travel and time travel theories, and even that is fascinating as it relates to this. But according to John, you don't really go back in your own time. The concept of time travel is really made up of a series of multiple universes. So what John did was he basically traveled to a multiple universe that looked exactly like his, except it was a little bit farther back in time. So he wasn't in his own past. He was basically in the past in another universe, and that's how you can meet yourself.
Oliver, next hour, toward the end of the hour and before the hour we take phone calls, I'm going to play that clip I've got with Larry Haber, the attorney for Titor's family. It's an incredible interview where his mother is on the phone. She didn't want to go on the air, and so questions are being relayed back and forth to her, and Larry answers it. And I found the attorney, as I found you, to be impeccable, and you all appear to be honest.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I remember listening to that too, and it's actually kind of frustrating because, I'd love to talk to her and I'd love to have an in-depth interview with Larry, but they're both very difficult people to get a hold of.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry did this as a favor to the show. He had apparently heard so much about what we were doing on Titor, and he said, all right, I'll talk. Just an amazing situation. Now, let's go back a little bit on the motivation of Titor. Why did he come back here?
If you had asked me that question 4 years ago, I probably would have had a different answer. But I have
and I probably did.
One of the things I noticed, every day, well, not every day, but every other day, I'll sit down and I'll do a little Google search. I'll look up black holes. I'll look up time travel. And that's how I kind of relate it to what's going on with Titor. What I've noticed is if you start looking up things, for example, CERN, if you look up CERN and black holes, John Titor is in the top 10. If you look up converting methane to hydrogen as a new fuel, John Titor's in the top 10.
That is incredible.
If you look up the IBM Pt.1, John Titor's in the top 10. So I'm beginning to wonder now if he knew that this was going to happen and that he's actually trying to get some information out there to somebody who he knows is going to be exposed to this because of where it is on the Internet. That's what I think is going on now.
Well, that's a good point. He apparently, at least when we talked a long time ago, needed to get some computer parts from one of those 5100 IBMs?
Correct. The reason that John said he was here was that he was a soldier in an Army unit in 2036, and his mission was to go back in time or to another alternate universe in the year 1975 and obtain one of the world's first personal computers. It was manufactured by IBM. It's called the 5100. And, according to him, he completed his mission and he got it. And he even talked about it while he was here. And one of the interesting things that he said about it was that he claimed that there was a thing that this computer did which was not published by IBM and that nobody knew about it, or very few people, maybe 5 people knew about it. And it was the ability for this computer to translate from various old IBM languages. So you could basically set this thing on a desktop, connect it up to a mainframe, and you were able to fix it or reprogram it. And he said that the reason IBM kept this information to themselves was because it would have destroyed a huge section of their infrastructure. They wouldn't be able to charge people to go out and do this, so they didn't want them buying this computer so they could do it themselves. Now, at the time, again, nobody paid much attention to that. After he left, a couple of IBM engineers came forward and said, you know what, I don't know who that guy was, but he's absolutely right. And I actually interviewed one of these guys in Rochester, Minnesota, and he said there's probably only 20 people on the planet that knew that. So that is another one of those twists that adds a little more to the story.
Yeah, Titor was either a genius who's still around somewhere, or this guy had the ability to travel in time, because other than some dates that might be off, we'll talk about that in a moment, he was pretty uncanny. Now, he also could be throwing little curveballs at people. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I've often thought that myself, is that he may be a time traveler, but he also might be a liar. So he may be just giving us enough information to do whatever it is he wants done, and then he's feeding us some things that aren't true for whatever reason.
He could be a disinformation guy.
Correct.
Now, wouldn't that be interesting that the government sends, when talk about conspiracies, Oliver, they send disinformation people back from time to screw us up even more.
Yeah, I don't even know how you would fight that.
You couldn't. You couldn't. And then he abruptly disappeared.
Correct.
How did he end up leaving? What happened?
He basically said, the window for me to leave is coming up. I think he said a couple of weeks before he left. And he said, I've got to be going back soon, so this is my opportunity to do it. So when I do, I'm saying goodbye. And abruptly on that day, he was gone. And nobody ever heard from him again. So it's assumed that he went back to where he came from.
There is a picture of the time traveler's time travel machine on your website, on Titor's website, I guess.